Hola camaleones, yo soy Herwin.
And I'm Rob. And for this episode, we say hello, chameleons. We have a brief note for our audience in Spanish, but we'll get right back to the episode in English.
Para nuestro público fiel de Camaleón, quiero contarles que este episodio es parte de un proyecto de STEM Fusion Soul Florida y hemos producido el episodio sobre la Tortuga Boba en inglés y en español. Si lo prefieres en español, puedes escucharlo sin problema en tu plataforma de podcast. El episodio aparece justo encima de este episodio de inglés.
Amazing. Anything else you want to add, Hedwin?
Creo que no. Nos vemos en el próximo episodio, camaleones.
Okay, thank you, Hedwin. Let's get started with this special episode, the first by Cumbre Kids in English. Okay, I want us to start this episode with a little exercise. Close your eyes. Imagine for a moment that you're a mother sea turtle. You need to lay your eggs so that your hatchlings have an opportunity at life. But where do you go? Mother sea turtles lay their eggs on beaches. But the ocean's big. There's a lot of beaches to choose from. Do you go to your favorite vacation beach? Do you choose the hottest beach? The biggest beach? Do you choose the beach where your friends go to lay their eggs? Or maybe, just maybe, you have a special sense for the beach where you were hatched from an egg many years ago, and that's where you go. We'll learn all about the sea turtle nesting in today's fascinating, very special episode of Camaleón, or as we might say in English, Chameleon, Animal World for Kids. I'm your host for this episode, Rob. We extend a very special welcome to our English-speaking listeners out there. For new listeners who may not know, our podcast Camaleón is part of Cumbre Kids. We usually produce fantastic science podcasts in Spanish, but today we're bringing an episode in English to accompany our Spanish language episode. The episode is produced with STEM Fusion South Florida, and our friends at Centro Campesino, After School All-Stars, the Frost Science Museum, and the Talking Science Group at Florida International University. It's part of an awesome summer experience for a bunch of future scientists. And today we're teaming up with Frost Science in Miami to learn all about Loggerhead Sea Turtles. We've collected questions from kids, and to help us answer them, we welcome Michelle from the Frost Science team. Hi Michelle, tell us about yourself.
I work at Philip and Patricia Frost Museum of Science. I am an educator here, and I teach field trip groups that come in a variety of different science topics, as well as I create and facilitate lesson plans for different programs that we have at the museum. I really like this job because I get to work with underprivileged communities that I kind of see myself growing up in, so it's very nice for me to give back to my community, as well as give them access to science, which I think is the most important part of my job.
That is fantastic, Michelle. You do super important work. Now, as we get started, tell us, what is your favorite animal?
And my favorite animal, actually, by coincidence, is a sea turtle. They've been my favorite animals ever since I did a project on them in high school, and I've been volunteering with a local organization to work with sea turtles for the past 3 years now.
Sea turtles are so cool. We're really lucky to get to discuss one of these incredible species, the Loggerhead Sea Turtle. Tell us, Michelle, what type of animal is a loggerhead sea turtle?
A loggerhead sea turtle is a marine reptile that lives in salt water, and they still have to come up for air, to breathe air. Their scientific name also happens to be careta careta, which I think is just really fun to pronounce.
I love that name, careta careta. Careta careta. Really rolls off the tongue. You know, some other examples of reptiles are snakes, turtles, lizards, even crocodiles. Reptiles are cold-blooded animals, which means they cannot maintain the same body temperature all the time. Animals like birds and mammals are able to maintain their own internal body temperature, and we refer to that as being warm-blooded. Human beings are warm-blooded.
Woo, that's me.
Instead, reptiles use heat from the sun to warm up, or they look for cool places to cool down, maybe in the shade or getting back in the water. How about we get back to learning about sea turtles? Michelle, if we wanted to go find a loggerhead sea turtle, where might we look?
Loggerhead sea turtles live in the ocean. They are very widespread, so we can find them in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. They can also live as far north as Alaska and Canada, and as far south in Chile and New Zealand.
Incredible! You find these turtles all over the place. And if I'm not mistaken, it appears that loggerhead sea turtles have a very large head. Is that right?
I love this question. So there are 7 species of sea turtles, and the loggerhead is most known for having a really big head and very powerful jaws.
Okay, Let's say you and I are out swimming in the ocean one day and we see a loggerhead sea turtle in the wild. What's it going to look like? What colors might it have?
Their coloring is also very different. So the top of their shell is reddish brown, while the bottom or their plastron is yellow.
Okay, kids. The next thing I learned from Michelle is how big the loggerhead sea turtle can grow to be. But before she tells us, I want you to think about it. Maybe you can even pause this episode to talk with your adult or a sibling or a cousin or a friend. How big do you think a loggerhead sea turtle is? I'll give you a couple options. Is it as big as a basketball? Is it as big as your bicycle? Is it as big as a professional football player? We'll give you a couple moments to think about it. You can even pause the episode to talk about what your ideas are. Okay, Michelle, I think we're ready for you to tell us the answer.
If we talk about size, they're not the smallest nor the largest sea turtle. They're kind of right in the middle. And that doesn't mean that they're small, though. They're a lot larger than most humans, and they can weigh up to 400 pounds.
Wowzers, 400 pounds? That's bigger than most professional football players. So we're not talking about a little turtle that you might have as a pet. They're really, really big animals.
If you guys are ever in the museum, you guys can check out the dive. And there you can have this little corner that's going to talk all about sea turtles and even our loggerhead sea turtle, Miko.
Visiting Frost to meet Miko sounds like a ton of fun. One interesting thing about Miko is that she was rescued by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission after she ate some fishing gear a few times. So the team at Frost welcomed Miko and gave her a safe home in their aquarium. You know, Michelle shared a fun fact with me. If you've ever seen the movie Finding Nemo by Disney Pixar, you might remember the sea turtle Crush.
So, Mr. Turtle...
Whoa, dude, Mr. Turtle is my father. Name's Crush.
Well, Crush is another species of sea turtle called a green sea turtle. And green sea turtles are even bigger than loggerhead sea turtles. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, Michelle, we have some questions from our listeners. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's go to our first question submitted by the scientists in our audience.
My name is Wells. I'm 3 years old. And I live in Houston, Texas. And what does sea turtles eat?
Thank you, Wells. What a great question. Tell us, Michelle, what do sea turtles eat?
This is a great question. Loggerhead turtles have a very diverse diet. They have the most diverse diet out of all the other sea turtles. As hatchlings, they tend to live in sargassum, which is a kind of algae. And in there, they find a safe place to live, as well as many different organisms to eat. As juveniles or adults, they start to use those powerful jaws they have to eat things like crustaceans and mollusks, like snails and crabs, things like that. And they also tend to eat fish and sea jellies. And the issue that we kind of run into here is with sea jellies and plastic pollution. Loggerhead sea turtles can't differentiate the two, so they tend to confuse plastic for food. And when they do, they eat it and unfortunately fall ill.
That's a fantastic reminder that we should be responsible with how much plastic we use and very, very careful about how we dispose of it or recycle it so that it doesn't endanger our loggerhead sea turtle friends. How about we go to our next question? This one's from Milam. Go ahead, Milam.
My name is Milam. I'm 6 years old. I live in Houston, Texas. And my question is, how long do sea turtles live?
They can live for a very long time. So they reach adulthood once they're about 35 years old, but some have been shown to live more than 80 years old, which is very similar to how long humans can live.
80 years? That means some sea turtles alive today were born in the 1940s. That's probably older than some of your grandparents. Now we have a few questions about how loggerhead sea turtles nest. Let's go to Maddie and Quinn.
Hi, my name is Maddie. I'm 8 years old and I live in San Jose, California. And my question is, do sea turtles lay their eggs in the sand to protect them from predators?
Hi, my name is Quinn, and I am 8 years old, and I live in California. My question is, why do sea turtles lay their eggs in the sand and not the sea?
Perfect. Those are awesome, wonderful questions. So all 7 species of sea turtles lay their eggs on beaches because they're reptiles. The loggerhead sea turtle likes to pick the middle of the beach because it's far from the high tide line and as well from away from the dunes. This is to protect the nest from any water intrusion that could affect the survival rate of the hatchlings. It's also not that close to the dunes because they want to protect it from any possible predators, and that's also why they're covering up their nests all the times. And one of the coolest things of those sea turtles is that they don't pick where they're nesting. They just go back to where their home beach is and then pick a suitable spot from there.
Sounds like the mama sea turtles know what they're doing. Not too close to the water, not too close to predators, just the right spot. While I was talking to Michelle, I asked how mother sea turtles find the perfect beach to lay their eggs. And to understand the answer, it's going to be helpful to talk a little bit about the Earth's magnetic field. Imagine Earth is like a giant magnet. You know how magnets stick to metal things, right? Well, Earth has a special invisible force around it that works just like a magnet, but it's much bigger, and it surrounds the whole planet. This force pulls things like a magnet, but it's not strong enough for you and me to feel. So just like how a magnet has two ends, Earth's magnetic field has a North Pole and a South Pole. And that's why when you use a compass, it always points toward the North Pole of Earth's magnetic field. Okay, with that context, Michelle, explain to us how a mother sea turtle finds the beach to nest on.
Scientists believe that these sea turtles have an innate ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field, which they use to migrate around the globe. They also believe that the females are born and imprint on the magnetic signature of their home beach. With these two abilities, those female sea turtles can return back to their home beach and nest.
Nature is so incredible. So even though you and I can't feel the magnetic field, a sea turtle can. And that helps her get back to the same beach to lay her eggs. Now we have a super interesting question that Ellie in California sent to us. Ellie wanted to know how many eggs a sea turtle can lay at one time. That question makes me wonder, Michelle, how do loggerhead sea turtles lay their eggs?
So loggerhead sea turtles can nest multiple times during the nesting season. They typically do this at night as well. And so they'll come up to the beach, they'll find a nice, dry, suitable spot, and they'll begin to excavate until they make a hole that's pretty deep. So this can be about 10 to 20 inches deep. Once they're done making that hole, they'll start to deposit or lay their eggs. And they can lay about 100 to 120 eggs per clutch. And once they're done laying their eggs, they'll fill in that hole, pack it down with sand, cover up, and try to camouflage as much as possible. Then they'll turn around and go back to the ocean.
Wow, more than 100 eggs in a clutch? And in case you're wondering, scientists use the word clutch to refer to the group of eggs that a bird or reptile lays at a single time. Okay, with that, let's take a moment for our mystery sound. Can you guess what animal this is? Think you have it? Okay, save your guess for the end. Let's go to our next question. This one's from Ella.
My name is Ella. I am 8 years old and I live in San Jose, California. My question is, does the temperature of the sand affect whether a sea turtle is male or female?
Yes. So this is actually called temperature-dependent sex determination.
Temperature-dependent sex determination. I couldn't say that 3 times fast. Tell us, Michelle, what are scientists talking about when they say temperature-dependent sex determination?
And so the temperature of the sand around the nest will incubate the eggs. So when the eggs are incubating at a temperature of 88.8 degrees Fahrenheit or more, they will all be females. If the nest is being incubated below 81.86 degrees Fahrenheit, they'll all be male. The ideal temperature is somewhere around these two, and if the nest is at that temperature, we can have a mix of both males and females.
Can you imagine if human beings were like that? It would be like if you were born in a cold country like Canada or Norway, you'd be a boy. But if you were born in a hot location like Florida or the desert of Chihuahua in Mexico, you'd be a girl. Kind of crazy, right? Let's keep talking about those eggs and hatchlings. Michelle told me that it can take 50 to 70 days, or about 2 months, for loggerhead sea turtle eggs to hatch. Now, Michelle, what happens after they hatch?
And once they do, they're about the size of the palm of your hand. They're also very dark colored, and their shells are still super soft during this time. Once they start their trek to the ocean, it's not easy for them. They encounter many predators like raccoons, birds, and dogs. And there are things in their way, like sandcastles and holes that people, are digging on a day of fun during the beach.
Okay, let's try to imagine that. I think about it like going on a top secret mission, but when you're a baby. You're a baby turtle, you just came out of your egg, you look around, and the very first thing you have to do is a dangerous trek from your nest on a beach all the way to the big ocean. It's good for us to know that things like holes and sandcastles on the beach can make it hard for these brave little creatures. So before we go home from the beach, we should always knock over our sandcastles.
And artificial lighting is a problem for them as well. So something really interesting is that as hatchlings, they're looking for the moon. So they're following the light that emits from the moon to get to the ocean. Artificial lighting can confuse them because it looks very similar to the moon. Once they get to the beach, they have other things to face, but they're where they should be now.
That's another fascinating lesson for us humans, that we should be very careful about where we put lights close to beaches so that we don't interfere with the hatchlings. Okay, Michelle, I want to learn about how scientists are studying these amazing creatures, but first, let's go back to our mystery sound. Okay, kids, do you know what it is? You probably do, but just in case, I'll give you 3 options this time. Is it a goose? Is it a duck? Or is it a swan? Goose, duck, or swan? What do you think? Okay, we'll reveal the answer at the end of the episode. Michelle, tell us what scientists are doing to study and protect the nests of sea turtles.
Scientific organizations work with trained volunteers or authorized personnel to survey the beaches, identify nests, and to place a perimeter around the nest to indicate that it shouldn't be messed with. Only authorized people do this work because of the sensitivity of this work and because of how important it is to sea turtle conservation. So just put it out there. If you ever see those sea turtle nests, you might want to just leave them alone because you're not authorized personnel.
That is such cool work. Can you imagine that, kids, working as a scientist to find and protect sea turtle nests? Speaking of protecting sea turtle nests, Michelle, I'd love you to tell us about how climate change is impacting sea turtles. Maybe to start off, when we refer to climate change, we're talking about changes in things like temperature, rainfall, and sea levels around the world. Climate change happens over a long period of time, and scientists are helping us to study it so that we can understand why the climate is changing and how it impacts people and other organisms like sea turtles. Maybe some of you listening will become climatologists, the super smart scientists who are studying the climate today.
All right, so this is a great question. So climate change is affecting almost everything on Earth, but especially sea turtles and their nesting sites. With sea level rise, or, the oceans rising, it can lessen the amount of beach we have. So basically the loggerhead sea turtles that need to nest, they have less sandy areas to nest. And because it's getting closer to the water, it adds that increased risk of those hatchlings not being able to survive. And with global warming, it can increase the temperature of the sand. And if we remember, the sand does determine whether there'll be females or males. So then in the future, we can have more females than males, which can cause a problem with reproduction and the amount of sea turtles we have later down the line.
Roger that. And maybe you're asking yourself, why is water dangerous for sea turtle eggs? Well, it turns out that the nests are like little beds under the sand, and if water gets in, the eggs can drown or not develop correctly. So it makes sense that things like rising temperatures and rising sea levels can pose a big problem for little sea turtles. Michelle, what can volunteers and communities do to help out these incredible little creatures?
Great question. Volunteers, local communities, and other organizations play a vital role in sea turtle conservation efforts. Volunteers can share what they know with other people in their community, such as giving turtles space as they're nesting. Don't try to put them back in the water. They know what they're doing. Members of the community can also support local organizations through data collection and beach cleanups. In Miami, we actually have a nest program where individuals can see and learn about sea turtle nests. This is in collaboration with Frost Science, as well as a local environmental nonprofit called Moraste.
Those are great ways to get involved. For those of us who live close to a beach, we can work to keep our beaches clean and volunteer with local organizations to help ensure that as many baby sea turtles safely reach the ocean as possible. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the episode. Let's briefly recap what we've learned. The Loggerhead Sea Turtle is a marine reptile that lives in oceans around the world from the Atlantic to the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Loggerhead turtles have a large head and strong jaws, and they can grow as big as 400 pounds. They lay their eggs on beaches. They dig holes in the sand and deposit up to 120 eggs in each clutch. We also talked about how the nest temperature impacts the gender of the hatchlings. High temperatures produce females and low temperatures produce males, which scientists call temperature-dependent sex determination. Okay, Michelle, what actions should we be taking today with all that we've learned to help out sea turtles?
All right. Another great question. So there are actually a couple of simple things that we can do, such as flattening our sand castles and refilling those holes that we're leaving at the beach. Those are things we can just think of as general cleanup after leaving the beach, just like picking up our trash. We can also write to city officials to change the lighting around beaches, because if you all remember, these sea turtles are attracted to the light of the moon and can be confused. These light bulbs can be in a different tone, so such as orange or red.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing your passion for sea turtles with us. And thank you to Frost Science and the whole team at STEM Fusion South Florida for your time preparing this episode. Any last words for our listeners?
Thank you, Camaleon. I would encourage people to always stay curious and always ask questions. Don't ever stop asking questions.
I literally could not agree more. We love your questions, and we think each and every one of you have a bright future as a scientist, helping to make this world a better place for human beings and for loggerhead sea turtles. And with that, we'll say adios. But first, let's discover the answer to the mystery sound. Do you remember it? The options were a goose, a duck, or a swan. Do you think you know it? Okay, if you said it's a swan, you were right. A fun fact about swans is that male and female swans mate for life, and they make such beautiful couples. Families, if you can, be sure to visit the Frost Science Museum in Miami, Florida to see their loggerhead sea turtle, Miko, in person, and to learn all about sea turtles and marine ecosystems. This special episode was produced in collaboration with STEM Fusion South Florida, including our friends at Centro Campesino, After School All-Stars, the Talking Science team at Florida International University, the Frost Science Museum, and of course, our team at Cumbre Kids. If you enjoyed this episode and you're a Spanish speaker or maybe a Spanish learner, we invite you to check out our other podcast by Cumbre Kids, Cráneo, Ciencia para Niños Curiosos, Camaleón, Mundo Animal para Niños, Buenas Noches Cráneo, and Los Negocios de Baden. Herwin Riera is the super talented host and producer of Camaleón. I'm Robert Carpenter, the executive producer. Our artwork is produced by the talented Moises Monsalve. Until next time, stay curious.
El camaleón, el camaleón,